Hello, my name is Janae Troyer. Today's date is March 30th, 2015, and I am interviewing Dr. Dorshell Stewart on the Ball State campus for the Ball State University African Alumni Oral History Project. It's a mouthful. Can I start by asking you when and where you were born?
Sure. I was born in Gary, Indiana, October 16th, 1975.
Okay, and what was your neighborhood like growing up?
Let's see. Predominantly black. I mean, Gary is a predominantly African American city. Without stereotyping, but being kind of accurate, it's like high crime, low income city, majority minority, if you will. My neighborhood was a block or so from my elementary school, a few blocks from my high school, and the main middle school that I was attending was several blocks further out from the high school, but pretty much the schools that you were attended were fairly close to where you grew up.
Okay.
Most people knew their neighbors. When we rode our bikes, we were only allowed to go, from corner to corner, just to make sure that our parents could keep an eye on us. But then, too, those were the neighbors that they mainly knew. So, pretty close-knit, family-oriented. A corner store that the kids would visit was in walking distance. So, pretty close neighborhood.
Did families look out for other families like your neighbors?
Yes. Let me see. There was the infamous rule, and a lot of, well, I don't want to stereotype, but a lot of my black friends, like we would always joke about saying you had to be in before the street light came on. And so seriously, and it usually happened around, it was either 6 or 8 o'clock. I know that's a big difference, but it was one of the two. And you could hear the hum of the street light about to cut on, and you're like, oh, I gotta get out. So, several of us will look out for each other. And, if any of us were caught cutting up or misbehaving, there was no problem with one of our neighbors saying, I'm telling your mother, especially at church. Maybe not in the community so much, but in our church community, if you got disciplined by Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so or Deacon So-and-so, then yeah, that was bad. So yeah, we kind of looked out for each other.
And could you tell me a little bit about your parents? Who are they?
Oh, sure. My mother, her name is Reverend Dr. Vera Stewart. She's recently deceased, however. And my father is Archie Stewart. They both grew up in Gary. Yeah, they were married, let me see, for 42 years. So he worked in the steel mill in Gary, which was a common occupation that provided lots of stability. And my mother, she actually, well, by her title, Reverend Doctor, she went on to graduate school. But she was an administrative assistant. Let me see, she was a manager at a retail store. She worked for different temp services. But her passion was pastoral care, which was doing the marrying, the burying, baby blessing, the arms of the church, if you will. She really liked doing that. And so that was her main profession that she eventually retired from.
Okay. How did your parents influence you growing up?
Oh, man. Well, I even kind of mentioned this to you all during the pre-interview. It was always, represent our family well. So they made a big impact on us. Education was very important. They always wanted us to do our best and present ourselves well. It was always the saying, my mother, mainly my mom, but my dad would say this too, don't have the teacher have to call us. You know what to do when you're at school. Do your best, be your best. If we were ever anxious or nervous about an exam we had to take, my mother would make a think drink for us. I came to realize it was just honey and lemon and hot water, but she concocted it in such a fashion that it's kind of like taking a placebo pill. You think it's working, but I promise I got A's on stuff because she made that think drink. So yeah, they made a big impact on us. So much so, my mom, with her getting her doctorate in ministry, it definitely made an impact on me and inspired me to realize that an advanced degree was a possibility for me. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. Always knew that. I mean, grew up playing school with my brother, but I never thought of being Dr. somebody or just having some initials behind my name. I just wanted to be Miss Stewart, a teacher. And so she made a very big impact on me in that regard. And my father as well, you know, representing the family well. He would always say there are no dummies in the Stewart family. You know, just little things like that that made us feel, even if we thought we were insecure or things we were anxious about, he would say, well, I mean, I don't know, there are no dummies in our family, so you can do it. You know, you must be nervous, so you must be anxious. So that made a big impact on us growing up.
When did your mom get her doctorate?
Let me see. It was in 2000 something. I can't remember the exact year, but yeah, I remember her graduation. It was very momentous. I mean, we've never attended anything like this before. And she graduated from McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago. It may be in a suburb of Chicago, but in essence, Chicago. And it was in June, and I was there. My siblings and I were there. My father, my nieces were, well, my niece and nephew were there. It was awesome. I mean, just to see my mom up there with the puffy robe with the 3 stripes. It is something because when you grow up I grew up in a Baptist church, and you would see the pastor preaching with a big puffy robe with 3 stripes. And I mean, I realize now they didn't all have doctorates, but it was just what they wore. I don't know. So to see that my mother could legitimately wear that, that really meant something. So we were really, really proud of her. Yeah.
What made her decide to get a doctorate so late in her life?
I really don't know. I remember that she would attend school in little sporadic spurts here and there. I remember as a girl, some days my dad would he wouldn't really pick us up for school because our schools were in the neighborhood. But some days we would pick my mom up from school, and she would take classes at IUN, Indiana University Northwest, which is in Gary. And I remember, I have memories of us picking her up from a night class, and I never really knew what she was doing. But apparently she was making little strides here and there to get some degree. But I think just her passion for really helping people. My mom was a very passionate person, and I think that along with her call to ministry, I think it just kind of inspired her to go the max, to go as far as you can, and not to pat yourself on the back or to have a huge ego, but to say, you know, I've done the most that I believe is possible for me to do. And that was very admirable. And it, as I said, it really inspired me as I was teaching not to settle, if you will. And teaching is an admirable position, don't get me wrong. It's very noble. You get lots of fulfillment out of it. But she always challenged me to make sure, her and my dad, to just make sure I was pushing myself as far as I could go and not become comfortable, stay in my comfort zone and just do what everyone else is doing because I'm afraid to try. So, yeah.
Do you feel like you're more like your mom or your dad?
I think I have moments. I tease my friends tease me all the time and say, "Okay, Vera, that's my mom." You know, when I look over my glasses, do the teacher look where you're like, there's that look. All teachers do it. They may not know they do it. And so when I'm in that mode, or if I'm really trying to explain things to someone, or I feel my voice heightening or just really intense about something, that's all my mother. Me talking with my hands, this is all my dad. Crying, that's all my dad. Now, he's more sensitive than my mother is, but I would say the sensitive side, the practical aspect of things, that's my father. The more passionate, in your face, verbal, looking over the glasses, like that's my mom. So it depends on the situation. It depends on who you're gonna get. Yeah.
What are some like lessons that your parents really instilled in you growing up?
Oh boy. I would have to say really that there are no dummies in the Stewart family. That really meant so much to me, especially in pursuing this doctorate degree. It was such a personal challenge for me. Um, just the task of graduate work. It really is humbling. You grow in areas that you don't think you need to grow. You learn lessons you don't anticipate learning. You're challenged academically, all of that. And so there's that. But then, too, my mother, she passed away from gallbladder cancer. And she was in remission for some time, but when it came back up, I was in the process of working on the defense actually. So getting the chapters written, getting everything done. And I would frequently visit my parents, go home every month or so to visit with them. And it was such a task to not pause what I was doing so that I could be there for them. But just the fact of saying, no, you can do this. Remember, there are no dummies in our family. Nothing should stop you. I'll be fine. Your dad's here taking care of me. And so even after she passed, I remember taking a good year to say, you know what, I need a break. I can't do this. I don't know if I'm smart enough. Those are, little insecurities pop up when you're doing a work this massive, to me, which was that great. But thinking again, there are no dummies in our family. You can do this. Where are you getting this thought from? It really was like a mantra for me to just keep going. Don't give up. You can do this. Thinking about the fact that my mother did get her doctorate. And I think she was, if not 60, close to 60. Who does that? For real. Who does that? Who has the time, the energy, the commitment? And she didn't go full time. She was still working. And so I thought, and, when her cancer came back, eventually she stopped working. But I thought to myself, surely, Dorshell, you are not battling cancer. You are not 60 years old. You don't have all these other things that my mom had going on. Surely you can do this. Mm-hmm. So just her battle with cancer, my dad saying there are no dummies in the Stewart family, looking at how he gave up his 401k and turned that over so that we could go to school. Like a lot of his coworkers at the mill thought, Archie, why would you do something like that? That's for you. And he would say, my kids are my future. So why would I hold that money for me? No, it's for them. And so just little sacrifices that he made like that, and just the talks that they had with us, I really felt obligated to push myself to the max. It wouldn't be Stewart-like to not do that. So yeah. They really had an impact.
Do you think like having a really solid family helped you to become as successful as you are today?
I strongly believe that. That and the fact that my parents really instilled, well, we're Christian. And so, and not just in name, but they really instilled in us to know who God is for you. And those two things were very, very strong for us. It's impossible to push yourself outside of your comfort zone without some strong foundation, some support. And yes, I would have to say it could be one parent household, it could be two parent, it could be your grandmother, your aunt, your uncle, whomever your foundation is. But it's definitely necessary, because you'll have those moments where you feel insecure or think, man, I can't do this, or I'm from Gary. I don't know anybody from Gary that does la la la. So it helps to have that support system to say, someone from Gary can do this. You're doing it. So yeah, it is important. It's definitely important.
And you mentioned that you have some siblings. How many siblings do you have?
I have 3. I have an older brother, an older sister, and a younger brother. So I'm third. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What are their names?
My older brother, his name is Renee. Okay. My older sister, her name is Latrice. And my younger brother, his name is Gregory.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you fit that like middle child role?
Oh God, yes. 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 My older brother, Renee, he's actually my half brother, but we really don't even look at him like that. But so when we came along, he was already, much older. and from a previous marriage, obviously. So in the house that I grew up with was Latrice and Gregory. And yes, I definitely was the middle child. They tease me to this day, but I wear it with a badge of honor. I got very few whoopings. I rarely got in trouble because I learned from them. So I thought, yep, Treese got in trouble for that. I'm not gonna. Greg got in trouble for that. Not me. So I really tried to pay attention. It was kind of, hard to find your place at times. Uh, yeah, I could say that definitely was me. But you never know because my later in life now, my father is much older, and me being the middle child, I'm thinking, okay, well, when it comes time to make decisions about things, surely it's not going to be me. I'm the middle child. I just hide in the middle, but here I am. So, I mean, you never know what will come of the family dynamics. You grow up as a child thinking, well, it will always be this person, it'll always be that person, but you never know. So they may not necessarily play a role later on in life.
What was your relationship with your siblings?
Let's see. My older sister definitely was that. She was the babysitter and all of that. My younger brother, he was the rascal, if you will. He would do lots of everything. But we got along very, very well. We were a very close family. Still are to this day. My brother still thinks that he's the younger brother. And I'm thinking, Greg, come on, you're going to be like 37. Dude, get it together. You're not the baby. But he still has those moments. But yeah, we have a very close relationship. Did lots of things together. Our parents did not try to separate us so much. So, but me again, having that middle child syndrome, you always feel, well, no one looks out for me. And I mean, it was validated as a child. I thought it was valid. But I realized that my parents did try to treat us all the same and equally, but we had a very close relationship.
Did you have any really special traditions as a family?
Let me see. For Thanksgiving, well, as a child, let me see. On Sundays, we would always go visit with my mom's parents. And so that would always be the tradition. After Sunday service, we go over to Grandma and Grandpa's house. When we got older, we would open up presents on Christmas. After we got old enough, we would help put some of the presents together for our other family members. Getting much older into adulthood, and especially when my sister got married, we would always come together for Thanksgiving. And eventually everyone celebrated Christmas on their own because my sister had kids and stuff. They wanted to have their own Christmas tradition. So mainly Thanksgiving was our big thing. So everyone would come into town. We visit with one another and have a good time. And we tried to keep it up even when my mom got ill with her cancer and with her treatment. It made her very sensitive to smells and tastes and things of that nature. And so we couldn't cook food at the house anymore. But, the year before she passed away, we came together and still just visited with her. So we still tried to keep that tradition up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What would you say your family's financial background was growing up?
It's hard to say. I would probably, I've been meaning to ask my dad that just because I teach a social studies class. But I'm really not for sure. I would think middle class. From my child's perspective and even looking at it from an adult perspective, it's kind of hard to say. You have working poor, so you can't really say. But I say maybe middle class because we didn't qualify for a free and reduced lunch. So we had to bring our lunch. We had to pay our own book fare at school. So if we weren't middle class, we weren't working poor because we didn't qualify for certain amenities like that.
Was that kind of normal for your neighborhood?
It was. My school district at that time, I can't say what it is now, but quite a few of the schools were free and reduced lunch, where you'd get free lunch or free breakfast. I'm not for sure about the book rental, if you had to pay for that or not, but we never qualified. And as a kid, I knew what it meant, but I didn't really know what it meant. I just saw all my friends with a lunch ticket. I'm thinking, man, I want one. Gotta bring money for school. What's that? So yeah, we always wanted to take advantage of that. So yeah, I would see my friends with that all the time, and just other little amenities. I'm thinking, man, what the heck? I didn't realize it was a benefit for their family. As a kid in high school, you're thinking, man, look at all these amenities. You get this, you get that. It's real silly to think that now, but yeah, it was common.
Yeah, okay. As a kid, did you have any like favorite toys or games that you would play growing up?
Oh, Barbie. I was a Barbie girl, and I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I played with my dolls for a long time. I collected them for a long time. I'm too embarrassed to tell you how old, but it was a long time. I wasn't in my 20s. But it was for a long time. And I mean, I had the Barbie doll dream house, the Corvette, seriously, anything you could think of, I had it. And I was so in love with Barbie. I really don't know why. But when I get my allowance, I would, tell my parents, look, I'll pay half. I know how much the Barbie doll dream house costs. I'm willing to put this much up to defray the cost. I was really serious about it. But yeah, Barbie. All day. I was a Barbie girl.
Did you have a lot of responsibilities then growing up? Because you mentioned an allowance.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we did. We had chores, and they were divided up by days. So on certain days, Latrice would have to wash the dishes, then I would, then Greg. We would rotate that. On Saturdays, we had to clean the house. So someone would be responsible for cleaning the bathrooms. Someone was responsible for dusting and vacuuming the living room, and someone had to clean the basement. And it was a furnished basement, so it wasn't as if it were, it's just a basement, just stock everything up nicely. No, like we had furniture, it was tile with paneling on the wall. It was a finished basement. So yeah, we had chores, and we had to, and at certain points we had pets. So my brother was responsible for the dog. So yeah. Laundry eventually. I remember in 8th grade I was doing my own laundry and sorting clothes and using bleach and things of that nature. So it was something, because when I came to Ball State, I was one of few kids that really knew how to wash their clothes well. Now you learn how to wash clothes, but I knew how to sort, and you need bleach for this, color for that. So yeah, we had chores.
How do you think like growing up has changed, like childhood has changed since you were a kid versus today?
I would have to say parenting is different. My parents were not afraid to be our parent. Yeah, I remember my mom saying, I'm not one of your friends at school. In fact, she was like, I'm not one of your funky little friends at school, depending upon her mood. I'm not one of your funky little friends at school. But yeah, she was like, I'm your mother. And so she was not afraid to say no, or she didn't seem to be afraid to tell us no or parent us. If we wanted to go somewhere, she wanted to know where, especially if it was over at someone's house. What's their name? What's the number? Do I know them? That type of thing. If we went to the mall or went to the movies, we got dropped off and picked up. There was no walking around on your own. I mean, some things that kids do now, going to the mall, things of that nature, we had to ask to go. There was no open agenda or, hey, Mom, or hey, Dad, I'm going here, I'll be back. There wasn't that. They screened our calls. They did not have a problem picking up the phone saying, you're not supposed to be on the phone right now. Who is this? Oh, man, I have to call my sister about that tonight, because those would be embarrassing things. But they did. They were parents. We had rooms. My sister and I shared a room. My brother had his own room. But there was no thought of, this is my room, you can't come in here. Like, to hear kids talk about that now, or parents say, I told him, but, he went to his room. And I'm thinking, what? I mean, that just was not the case. Yeah, my mom could come in our room at any point in time, and not to bully us or boss us around, but we knew that's Mom. So, I mean, and Dad. So, yeah, they parented. And not, being overbearing. I don't want to give that impression as well, but they made it clear, I'm your mom, I'm your father, this is what you need. You may not understand it, that's all right. Don't ask me why. I'm your mom, I'm your dad, I know. Trust me, you'll understand it later. If you don't, you'll be okay until you get over it. I mean, for real. Mm-hmm. And I'm better for it. Seriously, if I was given some of the liberties that kids have now, I do not think I would be, oh my goodness, I know I wouldn't be the person that I am now. Just having certain limitations on yourself, to hear the word no and not fall apart. I mean, it's such a small thing, but man, if seriously, you have to, and I mean, this is the best way I can describe it, especially with me teaching education classes and encouraging my future students, or future teachers rather, to have classroom management and to set up boundaries and guidelines. Kids will be okay the next day. You know, if they're upset with you because you didn't let me la la la, they will be all right. Really, it's for the betterment of them. So yeah, hearing no and being all right and understanding later, or not understanding, but it's okay. Mm-hmm. So yeah, things are different. I'm grateful, very, very grateful for the structure that my parents gave us. There were parties that they didn't let us go to that I'm thankful for now. Experiences that I have not had in high school, college, and being a young adult that I still have not had, that I'm grateful. If nothing else, I look better. I mean, seriously, just some of the experiences that my peers have had, they look like, ooh, you've been through, you know? And I'm like, wow, I'm thankful I haven't had some of those experiences. So yeah, it's different. It's different, but I'm grateful I grew up in the time period that I did, because I don't know if I would be prepared for life, or just poised. You know what I mean? So I'm grateful. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you've been involved in the church your whole life. How do you think that affected you as well?
It did. In addition to knowing that my parents were there as a foundation, they really instilled in us the fact that God loves us, God cares. He has expectations of us as well, and we are able to reach out to him and develop a relationship with him. In addition to that, my mother would always say things just to, again, help keep me in line, especially when I was in college. Because, you know, when you're here, you hear people say, you're in college, you can do what you want to do. And I lie to you not. My mother would say to me, Dorshell, and she would say it randomly at these little times where I think I wanted to test the waters and be grown. She would say, Shelly, God tells mothers everything. Who would tell their child that? I mean, I think about that to this day. And there were certain things, I'm not kidding. I'm graduated from college, and I would say, you know what? Let me try. No, because God gonna tell my mama. Never mind, I'm not gonna do it. And that's so funny, but it is so true. Oh God, that's funny. But it did help. And then once I got of age and really got a chance to learn who God is for myself, I began to develop my own relationship with him. So in praying and, you know, reading my Bible and going to church, just those two married together, it was very beneficial for the making of me.
Okay. And what denomination was that?
Let me see. I grew up Baptist, and eventually kind of weaned off it. So now I attend a non-denominational church.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Did you have like anyone really influential in the church, like pastors or?
Let me see. I really like to sing, and so I would always remember, you know, the choir directors, the minister of music, Mr. Jewell, Mr. Tyler, Wayne Evans, Bernard Evans, June Evans. I mean, all of these, Dr. Culp, all of these were different musicians that were either full-time faculty at one of the universities that majored in music of some sort, and this was a part of their passion or extracurricular, I'm not for sure. But they were so passionate about music, and it made me passionate about it. I just like to sing, but just to see how they trained us to be poised and take things seriously, I really appreciate that as well.
Were you ever baptized?
Yes.
Was it like a really big deal for your family?
It was. It was a big deal for my family. I mean, they obviously were happy for me, but it's something because as a child, other kids that get baptized, you swap these little stories about what happens. And there's always a thought of, oh, the water is freezing cold. Everyone always has a perception of what the water feels like. And at the church I went to as a young girl, there was a baptismal pool, and it was a serious like pool in the back of it was behind the pulpit, and you go behind, there's like this back door, and you walk down the stairs, and I mean, there's this big pool. Now, let me see, I think I was baptized, I believe, when I was 10 maybe. So I'm like 4th, 5th grade, and I was tall for a girl, so I would say maybe 5 something, okay? But the water was still very deep. Now it's maybe like 6 feet, okay? But it seemed like a bottomless pit of water, and everyone always had myths of like, well, what was the water? Oh, it was warm, it wasn't cold. And of course, when I got in, it was freezing cold. Your gown comes all the way up, and the deacons are there. You're like, oh my God. But it was cool. That's the one thing I remember. The water being freezing cold and everyone looking at you. Yes. That's my memory of getting baptized.
And like today you're still actively involved.
Uh-huh.
What ministries are you involved in?
Let's see. I volunteer at Christian Ministries. And our women's fellowship at our church, we volunteer on a monthly basis. We go there. Let me see. I volunteer with Second Harvest. I give to Muncie Mission. I serve on the board of Kingdom Force International Ministries. It's a nonprofit organization that does mission work in Jamaica. So I serve on the board with that. It isn't spiritually related per se, but, well, I won't even add per se, it's not. But the Health Coalition of Delaware County, I volunteer with that. Let me see what else. Those are the main ministries. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Those are the main ones that I affiliate with.
Is there a certain cause that's like really close to your heart?
It's kind of hard to say. There are several initiatives that you can always get me on board with. I'm a big proponent of mission work. And not necessarily for the spiritual message behind it. That's impactful, obviously. But you walk away with such a different perspective on what life is like for someone else. It makes you appreciate what you have in life so much more. So just having an opportunity to do mission work, I'm always a proponent of that. I really like trying to educate people by being a mentor. I'm really big on mentorship. And I say that because I had mentors in my life. The different individuals I named at my church over music ministry, like they mentored me along the way. Being a college student at Ball State, I had some mentors along the way to encourage me to do the right thing and just give little nuggets of information here and there. So I'm a big proponent of speaking to young ladies about that. And then also a new organization that I'm on board with is Teamwork for Quality Living. They have a poverty initiative where they really try to tackle poverty here in Delaware County. And so that's something that I'm very interested in as well, trying to make resources accessible to people as much as possible. And us really considering what our resources are. You may not think you have a resource until you speak with someone that's lacking what you take for granted. So I would say those 3 things are kind of things that you could almost kind of always see me volunteering with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I'm going to move forward just a little bit. Okay,
sure.
But when and where did you attend high school then?
I went to Lew Wallace High School in Gary.
Okay, what year was that?
I graduated in 94, so 90 through 94.
Okay, and what was the high school like growing up?
Let's see. Our high school, it had the reputation of, well, it had a horrible nickname. The nickname was Murder High. I know. And this is because years ago, I can't even give you the exact date, but years ago, some girls on their lunch hour, and I want to say it's true, but this happened years ago. I haven't read the articles to corroborate it. But these girls allegedly broke into this older woman's house and just like killed her over their lunch hour. And they went to our high school. I know, it's really horrible. And so anyone that goes to Luwalis during my time period was like, oh, you go to Murder High. I hated that. I hated that. In high school during the 90s or the time I was there, it was fun. I mean, I was a cheerleader. I sang in the choir. Band competitions were big. Football tournaments, basketball tournaments. I mean, extracurricular activities were the hype. I mean, it was the life. And so I really liked school during that time period. You would have, your occasional fights or arguments or see people skipping class, things of that nature. And once I left Gary and came to Ball State and came to a different part of the state and just a different way of life, I realized that some things I took for granted or accepted rather as the norm, I guess it weren't the norm everywhere. For example, I remember my freshman year here at Ball State, and I'm trying not to go back to Ball State. I'm trying to live in the question you're asking me.
Okay.
But I remember my freshman year, I lived in La Follette, and just sitting outside of La Follette at 2 o'clock in the morning with my roommate who went to Luwalis with me, and us just sitting outside talking and it being quiet. That was, I would have never thought to do that. For one, obviously you wouldn't be outside 2 o'clock in the morning when you're in high school. I mean, there's like no point for that. But just to hear that it's quiet, you don't hear any police sirens, you don't hear any trains, you don't hear gunfire. I mean, and it didn't sound like a war zone, but these were just things that you got accustomed to hearing. You were mindful of your surroundings. I'm still mindful of that. So I appreciate my upbringing where I grew up, but I realized, wow, I have grown up in an environment where I've become prepared for fights and just making a mad dash without even knowing why we're running. We could be talking right here, right now, and suddenly, if all of us just got up and ran, I would grab my phone and like, okay, let's go. And I'll ask what happened later. And you find out, man, somebody was fighting. Or, man, they said they were going to do that. Just little things like that. There were a couple times, one time in particular where a game was canceled because we heard some gangs were going to fight or something on the football field. And of course, we were disappointed, even if that was the norm. That wasn't our reality. For those of us on the cheerleading squad and those that played football, it's like, man, why are you going to mess this up for everybody? So we got accustomed to it, but we didn't like it. We always were mad about things like that happening. So yeah, it could be rough. Fortunately, I've never been involved in any fights. I've never had anyone physically assault me, things of that nature. But knowing that things like that could happen, a fight could happen, or someone could bother you or say, I'm going to beat you up after school, stuff like that, you're prepared and guarded. And you try not to be caught off guard, but you want to be proactive and not reactive in things. So, yeah, that's what it was like in high school. I mean, and I think back to this one particular incident. There would always be drill team competitions, and it was a citywide thing, and it would be great. I mean, you see different drill teams performing, all this good stuff, and it never failed. Like every year, there will always be a fight. Someone will always do something, and they'd have to pause, and we would always say, Mom, Dad, can we please go? Please, can we go? And every year it was like pulling teeth. Some years they let us go, other times they didn't. And it wasn't until I watched the Pacers game that one year when they got into that big brawl. I don't even know if you know what I'm talking about. But I was watching that on TV, and my sister called me and was like, Shelly, are you watching this game? And I said, I know, isn't this crazy? She was like, this is what it was like when we would go to those drill team competitions. And I was like, you are so right. And I thought, man, we were so blessed. I mean, to not get caught in any of that stuff, but I realized, man, now I know why our parents didn't always want us to go. This is what it would look like. I mean, seriously, if you go back and Google that brawl and just, not the players obviously, getting into fights with the fans in the stand, but just mass chaos that just abruptly happening and people reacting. That's what it was like at times. So, yeah.
Like despite all the danger, but what did you guys do for like fun?
Let's see. We had games, and with me being on the cheerleading squad, obviously that was that. I was involved in the choir at my church, so on weekends we would always do that. We liked going to the movies, and there weren't really movie theaters in Gary. We would go to Maryville, which is like 5 or 10 minutes away. It's kind of like driving to Yorktown from Muncie. And so we would go to the mall, go to the movies. I really didn't get into bowling until I came to Ball State. But that was mainly hanging with friends, going over their houses, having sleepovers, things like that.
Did you ever feel, as you were growing up, like you were treated differently because of your race?
No. I would say I didn't really become all the more aware of race relations until I came to college. With growing up in Gary, as I said, it's like predominantly African American, and so you kind of get used to it. So the issue isn't race; it's just dealing with people who will or will not act civilized, or violent acts occurring. There were it was kind of like reverse. How can I say it? Well, the minority race, like African American, was predominant at my high school, and you had a few white students, a few Latino students there, and so they might have, obviously they had a different experience at my high school than I did, but it probably mirrored what it was like to be a student at Ball State for them. But no, there weren't really, no, I wouldn't say there were race issues that I was aware of that I experienced, no. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
While you were in high school, the Soviet Union broke up. Was that like a big thing at all?
I could not tell you. I remember our teachers really, now they may have addressed it. I do know that the underlying theme was making sure that we graduated from high school and that we were prepared for college. I was a part of the high track classes, and they were very, they were very serious about us graduating and going off to college. So I want to assume that was a part of the conversation, but I can't tell you if it was. Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say that, but yeah, that's not a big memory.
What about technology? Because like the computer became more accessible and internet.
That really popped up in college.
College.
Yes. I remember getting, in fact, when we were college students here, Yahoo came about maybe like my junior or senior year in college. So, yeah, there wasn't much technology. We would go to the computer lab maybe to type up papers, but there was the word processor or the typewriter. Oh, I sound so old when I say that. But yeah, no, technology wasn't what it is today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you ever think it would like take off like it
did? Gosh, no. I remember when I got my Yahoo account, I was nervous about it, thinking, now what is this going to mean? But I just appreciated just how much faster it was than the previous system we had. I don't even know what it was called, but it was much, much faster. And it's something because I still have the same username that I had when I started it here at college. But yeah, I never, oh God, no, never would imagine it just blossoming into what it is now. It's amazing to what technology, to where it's come. It's very amazing.
So like preparing for essays and stuff like that, did you end up going to the library instead of just wikiing it?
Yeah, going to the library. Yes, my parents purchased encyclopedias. We had big dictionaries in our home. Asking mom and dad lots of questions. Yes, research was, to me, the way technology is now, I think compared to what it was like when I was in high school, I physically felt the brunt work of research, going to the library, checking out these books, thumbing through these books to find what I need and copying it down, the page number. Now, I mean, you can download, get the electronic journal. Don't get me wrong, the mental work is still there, but the labor behind going to get it and sitting there, yeah, it was a bit more intense, I would have to say, than it is now.
Do you think it helped you to appreciate the work you've done more then?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, just saving work. I mean, I'm still very mindful or think twice before I throw things away. I remember the floppy disks. I mean, yeah. Just little things like that. You're afraid to throw certain things away because you're thinking, no, I may need it. And it's on a floppy, you can't use it. I don't know. I still may need it. So, yeah, it does make you appreciate things a whole lot more because the labor behind typing this out opposed to going on Word and making an adjustment and hit Control S. Man, it's so much deeper. You had to use the whiteout. Oh, man. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Around that same time, there was the O.J. Simpson trial. Do you remember anything about that?
Yes. What year was that again?
1994.
Yes. I remember, just randomly having conversations thinking, do you think he did? Of course, everybody I knew that was black. Nope, he didn't do it, of course. I mean, they were just, he didn't do it. And I would always try to avoid conversations like that. Just because, I don't know, I felt like certain conversations would get heated and the purpose of the conversation would get lost, and what would be the lasting factor is the emotion behind what you're saying. But I know in everything I always try to remain objective. I can definitely say that, but yeah, we thought that was going to last forever. I mean, now I don't even remember how long it was the trial lasted, but man, it seemed like it lasted forever. But yeah, I would overhear people having conversations. As I said, white students were thinking, he was guilty. Black students thought he wasn't guilty. And I mean, when the verdict came about, like, man, just, I dreaded going to class because I didn't want, students to think that I was for them and just wondering if they're going to look at me differently. I mean, so I really just tried to go to class, avoid conversation as much as possible unless someone asked me. And I will always try to give the most objective answer, not the black answer or the white answer, but just my personal opinion on things. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it got so heated?
I'm really not sure. I mean, when you just look at it, may have, I think maybe race and class kind of collided, because when you see these liberties that were extended to him, I mean, the fact that he was able to drive around in that white Bronco for however long he did, it's like, man, if that were in my hometown, trust me, you would not have been given those liberties to drive until you just can talk yourself into pulling over. No, like, they're going to make you pull over. And so I think that might have been why there was such an issue, because, black males during that time period, I mean, when crime, all this good stuff was good stuff, but when all of that was happening, there was no grace. There wasn't this, well, let's try to wait it out and see what happens. No, there was like immediate action that was taking place. So that's why I say I think the race and class kind of met each other. And it's like, whoa, this black guy is getting all these amenities and this privilege of being able to drive. I mean, when I think about that, it's like, dude, you really drove and just, yeah, it was something. But I think that may have been the reason, just race and class kind of collided, and here is this affluent black male. He's tapping into these resources that me from my hometown, we certainly did not have these luxuries. And for some whites that did have that, they're seeing this minority living in equal amenities, and it's like, whoa. So I think that may have been a part of it. Mm-hmm.
Do you think like police were harder on African Americans than whites?
Well, I think back to, well, it's kind of hard to say because, again, my upbringing, just seeing the violence there, all the guys that got in trouble were black. I don't know if it's because they were targeted or if it was because it was a predominantly black city. So, I mean, you've got that. Then you have crimes that you find black males during this time period constantly being involved in. So I don't know if police had preconceived notions on automatically assuming that whoever we're about to pursue is a black male, so you have to pursue it in this fashion. I remember the Rodney King thing came about, and just looking at that, and really, as I said, objectively looking at this, because I'm thinking of myself as a future teacher. I want to be a teacher, and so you have to look at the truth and allow students to form their own opinions. And just looking at it, it's like, man, why did they just keep beating him like that? Like, they are like really beating this guy. And so little things like that, it was a challenge because Rodney King, if I remember correctly, well, I'm sure, I don't want to make an assumption, but I don't believe he had as many amenities as resources as O.J. King did. And so to see the different treatment, it was really something. But yeah, that blew my mind just to see how he was just mercilessly beaten like that. And just consistently, it's like, oh my God. And I remember little things like that. My dad would tell my brother, make sure you aren't wearing sagging pants. My brother could not do that. He had to have his pants up on his waist. He had to always wear a belt. And those were the little things when I say about parenting that my brother wasn't able to say, well, I think I want to wear this. It's like, no. Seriously, it was at a certain point in time where whenever my brother would leave the house for school, my dad would say, let me see your pants. And he'd pull up his shirt. Okay. And so just making sure that my brother wasn't targeted just based upon how he was dressed before he even opened his mouth or anything. So it did make you mindful. It did really make you mindful of some things during that time period of how you present yourself. And even me, making sure that I don't look offensive, even if I don't even know if there's a way you cannot look offensive, but when you just see what's going on in society and what's happening in the world, you're wondering, well, I wonder if, if people know I'm from Gary, if they just automatically think, well, I know how to fight, or you must carry a gun, or, just little things like that. And it's like, well, no, actually I don't. I've never been in a fight. I think I can handle myself, but, just you want to make sure you check yourself and making sure that you aren't carrying any stereotypes, or you try to address concerns that I may think someone else would have before they even say anything. So you're constantly monitoring yourself. Yeah.
Do you think then that class was a bigger issue than race?
It's really kind of hard to say. I can't say if one was more than the other. It just really seemed that they just met. Mm-hmm. And I don't know which one was greater than the other. But, you see, when you just see these two things come together, this black male, when you look just historically during that time period when other, black males go to jail for drug possession, weapon possession, all this other kind of stuff. And it's like boom, boom, boom. The process is quick. And to see just the time of the length of this trial, to me, it really just showed access. And just the time to hire an attorney that can disaggregate everything that makes up this case. Yeah, I can't say which was more than the other. I just think they both were very much present. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to move forward just a little bit to
Sure.
Ball State now.
Sure.
When did you attend Ball State?
I came in August of 1994.
Okay, and why did you choose Ball State?
Well, I wanted to be a teacher, and so everyone knows if you live in Indiana, you want to be a teacher, come to Ball State. So I've always known I wanted to come to Ball State.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
How hard was it to pay for it financially?
Let me see, I eventually got student loans. Mm-hmm. Initially, my parents did start paying for it, yes, and then it was around I think my junior year was when I had to start taking out student loans. Mm-hmm.
Did you have a job while you were on campus?
Yes, I did. I worked in dining services in La Follette. And then eventually I was in, let me see, I wasn't an RA, but I worked at the front desk in the residence halls.
Was it hard juggling like work and school and a social life?
No, not really, because I mean, a lot of my friends are work study students too. So we knew at some point we had to work. You know, we tried to juggle um, school work with work, but it wasn't that bad because our supervisors knew that we had to get our coursework done. I really would try to monitor my time as best as possible, try to work ahead to get things done so it wouldn't interfere with my work schedule or my social life. But no, it wasn't too bad, excuse me, because as I said, a lot of my friends are work study students too, so it wasn't abnormal for me to be the only person. You know, we all were.
Yeah. What did you major in?
Elementary education.
Okay, and you said you always wanted to be a teacher.
Uh-huh.
But what got you interested in elementary education specifically?
Well, in being in high school, that really kind of solidified it for me. Well, several things. One, I babysat a lot as a girl, and so I remember tutoring my young cousin and helping her learn how to read. That was very fulfilling for me, and so I knew I wanted to do something like that. But then too, just being in high school and being in class with my peers, teenagers, and it's something that I would think this, but teenagers are so mouthy. And I thought, man, I do not want to have to deal with you all when I graduate. And then too, seeing what it was like to have a substitute teacher in high school who was in their 20s and us being in our teens. Like, my peers did not consistently respect them all the time. The guys would always hit on if it was a female. And the girls would always be like, oh, Mr. So-and-so, you know, just have the crushes and whatnot. And then, too, they saw that the age difference wasn't that great. And so I didn't want to always have to defend myself in that regard. And so I thought, I don't want to have to deal with this. Let me go with the kids, the babies, and help make a difference with them while they're young. And then when they get to high school, they won't be as mouthy as my friends are. So that was my thought behind it.
Did you have any influential professors here?
Yes, Dr. Burke and Dr. Tancock. I know Dr. Tancock is still here. Dr. Burke, I don't believe, so I tried looking him up not too long ago. But they really stood out to me. I would say more Dr. Burke, well, both of them for their own reason. I can't say one is more than the other. I remember having a particularly bad day, and this was when I was doing a practicum experience at Burris. And I thought I'd done a good job. You're working with a group of students, and this Burris teacher, who is still there, I looked her up a few years ago. I don't know why we look up things like that, but she's still there, and she gave me my evaluation, and she said, you really may want to reconsider teaching. I don't think this is for you. And I mean, that just broke my spirit. I mean, I didn't cry. I didn't give her the satisfaction of crying in front of her, but I was so down. And I don't even know if Dr. Burke was my professor for this class. I can't even tell you. But I remember talking with him, and he is the only professor I've ever, well, in my dissertation defense, but he's the only other professor that I cried in front of. And I mean, I was so broken. And he said, Dorshell, listen to me. You will be a good teacher. You will be effective. Do not let this discourage you. You will be fine. And he just does not know how those few words, they really just helped pull me back together. And because of Dr. Burke, I am very adamant about having an open door policy with my students. I advocate for them to come and talk to me during my office hours. And when they come and meet with me about whatever it is, I always start off the conversation with, how are you doing? What's going on? Did you enjoy the weather today? How are you doing with your friends? I mean, we just have conversation not connected to academics, just to let them know that I want to know how you're doing, because Dr. Burke kind of did that for me. And then Dr. Tancock, she stands out to me for a different reason. She made me consider working at the university. And it was nothing she said. I was waiting for her outside of her office one day, and I was taking her class to get a reading endorsement because I have my degree is in elementary education, and I also got a reading endorsement while I was here. And I was waiting for her outside of her office, and when she finally arrived and I walked in, I just marveled at the size of her office and just what exactly she did. And I remember thinking to myself, it's quite arrogant now that I think about it, but I said to myself, I'm going to have your job. Now, who says that? I mean, I don't care how you preface that statement. It still sounds kind of arrogant. But I thought to myself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have her job. I never knew what it took to get to work at the university, none of that. But she set an example for me and like I said, we talked about probably an assignment. We didn't even talk about what she does. But I took all of that in and I thought, I'm going to do this. So, yeah, those two individuals really stood out to me here.
Do you think their teaching style also influenced the way you teach now?
Yes. Dr. Burke was very relatable, very personable. And, I mean, he was a much older gentleman. He was much older, short, grayer hair, but he really just was so personable. He didn't make himself seem unapproachable. He really wanted us to get the most out of our experience here at Ball State. And that's something that I really mirror in my classroom. While I emphasize my methods class, I really emphasize too to my students to get the most out of your experience here. You're going to go into student teaching pretty soon. You don't want to look back on Ball State and it be a blur. Or you only think about, man, that party was fun. And you don't remember what you came here for. And so, yes, his style was very personable. Dr. Tancock, because I did take her class for a reading endorsement, she really helped me see the power of children's literature. And she read to us in class. Now, she was probably modeling how to do, reading or read alouds in your classroom. But she was just very approachable. My persona of what I thought professors were or should be, just very stoic and unapproachable and serious, and you glean from me, that type of thing. Those two were not like that at all. They were professional, don't get me wrong, but their personality was inviting. Their aura was just welcoming. I mean, they were just great people. You wanted to just talk with them for a few minutes after class about whatever. And so that really rubbed off on me. And I believe that my teaching style, or at least I try to mirror that. And some students tell me, man, I really enjoy this class and I really appreciate how you just talk with us. And so that makes me feel good because they were that for me. And that helped me have memories of my classes, not just the experience here at Ball State, which I think is what you should have. Mm-hmm.
As a professor now, is there anything like looking back that you would do differently as a student?
I would probably talk with my professors more and not see them. I would try to find the Dr. Tancock, the Dr. Burke in all of my professors. Because while, some professors may have personalities that don't appear approachable, at the bottom line, at the end of the day, they want you to be successful in your career. And I wish I viewed all of them that way, that I took advantage of their office hours more and just try to glean from them as much as possible academically, as related to the class and for life as well. Just realizing that they can be approachable. It's something as students, they really think, man, if I go to my professor's office, he's just going to bite my head off, or she's such a jerk, just all this kind of stuff. And I would really just go to their office hours and express, I really want to do well in this class, and what can I do to do better, and not be so afraid to approach them in things. I think that would have helped me not be so intimidated in multiple life lessons if I just had taken the step to do that while I was here. Mm-hmm.
What was the campus life like?
In what way? What do you mean?
Socially.
Let me see. Well, let's see. student voluntary service was here, and I remember I would volunteer with that. There would be parties on the weekend. I loved Halloween because the SIGEPs always had the best Halloween, the haunted house. I asked students today, they're like, yeah, they still have the best. So I remember that. My freshman and sophomore year, I would attend the parties for the black fraternities and sororities, and eventually I just got tired of it because you would see the same people all the time. And so eventually I just connected with my friends. But the campus was different, just looking at its structure. I mean, we didn't have the atrium. And so I could speak from the black student perspective. You would find your friends congregating in TC. That was our atrium. No one hardly ever hung out at the student center. It was like a dungeon. No one ever wanted to go there. So TC, the first, the main lobby or in front of the building, that was the spot. You would see students, if the weather was great, walking more often. People took the shuttle, if it got close to class time, but most people would walk. You see people, laying out on the lawn. It was, I would say those are my memories of what the campus life was like.
And just to clarify, TC is Teachers College,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, Teachers College.
And what extracurriculars were you involved in?
Let me see. I was a part of Voices of Triumph Gospel Choir. I volunteered with Student Voluntary Services. I was a part of the Big Brother, Big Sister program. Those were the main ones. Yes. Mm-hmm.
When did you join the Big Brother, Big Sister?
I joined, I think it was my junior year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Were you a mentor or a mentee?
A mentor. This young girl who was from East Chicago, which is 20 minutes from Gary. She was a freshman here at Ball State, and I was connected with her, Latice. Let me see, her name was Latice Walden. She's Latice Jenkins now. But yes, she and I connected, and we hit it off instantly. And we did things together. We became friends. And it was great. There were little competitions that we have with the Big Brother, Big Sister program. We'd have Family Feud night. All the things, to help kind of build a relationship with your mentee. And it was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
How do you think the program helped the mentees?
Oh boy, if nothing else, Latice and I are still friends. We don't talk frequently as my best friends, but I could text. In fact, I reached out to her for this program and said, hey, Latice, you may get an email from Dr. Doyle. She's, okay, I'll do it. Seriously. I went to her wedding. It just really helped. It helped build their confidence. It helped them know that they had an ally. If they had questions about anything, about what to do, what not to do, there's always these social norms. As a freshman, you don't want to look like a freshman, things like that. It was very beneficial. It really helped her transition from high school to college. And obviously, the social aspect was important, but we would have study sessions together. She saw me study, just little things like that. So it really was beneficial. Mm-hmm.
How did it impact you?
Oh, man. I really didn't think I had, how do I say this? It wasn't until, and I don't even know how I got to be a part of this program. Probably one of my friends talked me into doing it. But I began to see that I have something to offer. I only thought I have to have someone that's an elementary education major. We could talk about classes, things of that nature. But to see that I could offer her some guidance and life skills. And it was really something because when she came to Ball State, she was a teen mom. She had 2 kids. And I had the same reaction. My eyebrows were like, oh. And again, completely something I was not exposed to. I don't know what it's like to be a teen mother, all of that kind of stuff. But to see that she took my advice and didn't think that what I had to offer her was some high middle class perspective, like that's your life. That doesn't work for me. She never rejected anything I had to say. And that validated me to make me feel, wow, okay, maybe I do have something to say. I know I want to be a teacher, but maybe I'll be good at it. And as far as relating with people. So it helped me as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned earlier that once you came to Ball State, that's when you came to recognize race. Like, could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, well, I intentionally decided to come to Ball State, as I mentioned before, because I knew the teacher education program was great. But I wanted to go to a campus that was not like like Lew Wallace. I did not want to go to a HBCU, historically black college university. I did not want to do that. All my friends were doing it, and I told them, look, we live in Gary. Why do you want to go to a college that's exactly like this? This is not the real world. I want to go somewhere that mirrors what the real world is like and to help prepare me for society. So it was a bit rogue for me to kind of do something like that and think that way. But I did. And I immediately began to see and again, it may not have been anything that the professor said or that the students said, but just seeing what it feels like to be the only black student in your class. And it's like, okay, gotta be on, and this is pressure I may have put on myself. Again, sticking with the thought of, there are no dummies in the Stewart family, all of that's going through my mind, thinking, okay, represent yourself well, do your assignments, be on top of things. And so I felt I had to do well for my family, and because I was the only black student in here. And some students, when you talk and have group work, they share, I've never met anybody black before. They ask you questions about your hair, just little things like that. And so you're mindful of things, and you realize, wow, things that I just consider as normal for me, as my hair, that's totally new for someone else. So I need to be comfortable and not take it offensively immediately if someone is asking me a question about myself. And so, yeah, I would say just going into classes and seeing myself being the minority, like, wow, okay, this is what the minority feels like. Because in Gary, we were the racial minority for the United States per se, but in Gary, we were not the racial minority. So I got a chance to see what that was like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have many African American professors?
No, I didn't have any. No. Mm-mm.
Did that affect you at all? Was that weird at all?
No, I mean, I wasn't expecting that. I came to realize later that teaching is majority white, middle class, female profession anyway. But at the time, I actually would have been, because there was such a small population of black students on campus. If I actually had a black professor, I would have been like, oh my God, I got a black professor. I mean, it was just that scarce during that time period. So no, I wasn't surprised by it.
Do you think like the ratio in teaching, like, has that the diversity has it gotten better as the years have gone on?
I think it's getting better. I see now in the past 2 years, I see more Latino students that are in the education program, which, I mean, I didn't want to make them awkward, but inside I was like, woohoo, like, good. Because you may see, and by minority, I mean the difference. I mean, minority has different meanings. You may see a class of all white students, but I have more males. So, that pops up. I had a semester where there were, I taught 3 sections, and there was like 1 black female student in every class. And so, every now I'm starting to see more Latino students. And so I think it's growing, but there's always room for growth. But it is growing, I can say that.
Okay. And then you became a teacher, like, right out of college.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
Oh, man. Scary. Nerve-wracking, but I was very excited. I had strong mentor teachers supporting me along the way. My principal had confidence in me because I was a Ball State graduate. Again, Ball State carries a very wonderful reputation as far as Teachers College is concerned. And so My principal had confidence in me. My mentor teachers did. So they supported me along the way, but I was very nervous. It was a challenge, but I survived it. I survived it well.
And where did you teach?
In Gary. I went back and taught in Gary.
Which school was that?
I taught at Jefferson Elementary School.
Which grades?
My first year was first grade, and then, well, I taught 5 years in total. So my first year was fourth grade, and the remaining first year was first grade. I'm tongue-tied too. And then the remaining 4 years were fourth grade. So it was cool to eventually see my first graders come to my fourth grade classroom. That was cool. That was cool.
And you have a real heart for history, right?
I wouldn't say, I would say I'm growing to be more and more passionate about it. I would have never thought myself to be a social studies methods teacher. The opportunity presented itself when I was doing my graduate work at IU. And that's when I was given my experience to teach the undergraduate class. And every year, I get more and more passionate about it. I grow to realize that social studies is it's an organic topic. We make up society. And so it's all the more imperative for teachers to make time for that in some form or fashion in their curriculum calendar, their time structure throughout the day. So I can say now, yes, I'm very passionate about it. When I started out at IU, it was still growing, and me figuring out, why am I doing this? I had my reading endorsement. I thought I would have been in teachers college, but I'm glad I'm over here because I believe I opened up my students' eyes to perspectives on how to teach social studies, and they walk away thinking, wow, okay, this is not what I thought I was going to get out of a methods class. I have them do things like examining what's in their knapsack, what makes up who they are. We all have gifts, talents, biases, beliefs about religion, social class, and all of this will make its way in some form or fashion in your classroom. And so social studies kind of starts with me. That's the way I teach my class. So I'm very passionate about it now. When I first started, I was like, I don't know, but I love it.
Why do you think it's important for students to learn history growing up?
Oh boy, it shaped us who we are as a society. It's a part of our world history. It's important for us to not just know about the past, things that happened, but to be able to think and act democratically. Those are the two things that I teach in my class, to have social understanding, which is, knowledge of what happened, but civic efficacy, meaning I not only know how to think democratically, but I act it. A lot of people know what to do, they just don't do it. And so I really try to instill that in my students to make sure that their future students have an opportunity to think and act democratically, because they're educating future citizens. We can't just view them as cute little fourth graders. That fourth grader is going to be 18. And if you don't give them that quality education, he or she won't be prepared to act democratically.
Do you think events that focus on history, like Black History Month, really do it justice?
No, I can appreciate the spirit behind the cultural calendar, if you will. I appreciate the spirit behind it. I know why it occurred. But I think in order for our future citizens, elementary kids, to really get the gist of it, we've got to find a way to intermingle it. You don't only deal with Latino issues during Latino Month, during women issues during Women's History Month, and Black issues during Black History. I mean, the world is not like that. And so, as I said, I can understand the spirit behind why things like this come about, to make sure that there's recognition, that there's appreciation, that there's understanding, knowledge is shed, you're aware. I appreciate the awareness that it brings about. But in order for kids to really get the most of it, and teachers to really see that this is supposed to be an organic thing, you've got to find a way to integrate it all 180 days of the curriculum. You've got to. Or you'll be the teacher, but you'll still have your own stereotypes and bigotry and not even know it, because you didn't find a way to infuse it in everyday occurrences. You can't, life isn't like that.
Okay, and then you, I remember reading that you felt, as a teacher, constrained by the limited resources you had for younger students.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit
Sure.
longer?
Our school district I was always given the impression that we were struggling financially, always. And so we didn't have when I was teaching, it was the whiteboard. We didn't have the whiteboards in our classrooms. There weren't computers for every student. We had a computer lab. We didn't always have the most updated computers. We had 4 computers in our classroom. We had one LCD screen, or projector rather, and we could only go to it mainly in the library. Supposedly the librarian was able to bring it around to each classroom, but she always made it seem like it was some big fuss to do, so we just said, never mind, forget it. So just little things like that. We didn't always have enough textbooks for every student. When I would teach reading, my students weren't allowed to write in the workbooks because there was no guarantee we get new workbooks every year. So some things, I can understand why some schools or some teachers don't give homework, or the type of homework that they give, because there's no guarantee they're going to get that book back. And so you have to, if you do give students, I would call it more of an extension activity. And if they aren't done with it in class, then it becomes homework. Not because I don't want to give it to them, but we don't have the resources to give you that quality of homework for you to do it at home. There also isn't that guarantee that you're going to have the home support. And again, in Gary, you had parents that were working. And so some kids were latchkey kids, meaning, they'd have the key and let themselves in at home, when they got out of school. We were latchkey kids. Our parents were working. My mom would get off work when we were younger, say 5 o'clock. So we knew to come home, open the door, lock it, don't let anyone in, do your homework, that type of thing. And so as a teacher, I couldn't always give certain levels of homework because I knew the parent may not be there, or the home conditions weren't conducive to them doing a research project or doing a poster project, because their parents may be having a card game party or game night at their house and aren't mindful of the fact that their 8-year-old is trying to do their spelling homework. So you're mindful of home life as well as resources. So yeah, all of that kind of impacted things that were extension activities that they were allowed to do at home.
Do you think latchkey programs would help students to get that done then?
I think that they would, if you had the programming and the qualified professionals to man those programs. I think sometimes, I don't know, I don't know. I don't know if latchkey is monitored by teachers. Probably isn't, because they're in the classroom closing down their day and probably don't want to extend their day like another 2 or 3 hours. So it's probably just supervised by parents or volunteers who say, okay, do your homework, eat your snack, we may give you a game. And please, I hope I'm not demoralizing or playing down what they do. I'm just listing what it is. I don't think that in order for it to be effective in that regard, that just a volunteer could do it. You probably have to have a teacher to have some kind of extension program, which is why I think here in Muncie, the MP3 program is so effective, because you have educators that are given a stipend to extend the school day for kids that are part of that to get enrichment activities. Very similar to what home life was like for me back in Gary. So it was an after school / latchkey program, if you will, but it was definitely educational. So yeah, there was a difference.
As a teacher, did you ever feel limited by standardized testing?
Yes. Yes, I was. My students didn't always come in performing on the grade level that they were in. So I taught 4th grade the majority of my time at Jefferson. And every student that came into my 4th grade classroom was not ready for 4th grade. They weren't. And so I was always afraid that my students would do poorly on I-STEP and that the superintendent would come in and fire me on the spot. That was always my fear. Of course, that doesn't happen. But I was afraid of that. And my students, they'd eventually get their scores. They'd get sent home to the parents, and they'd look over them, and they'd feel like they didn't do well, or as they're taking the test, they're filling in the bubbles, and as the teacher, you're not allowed to assist them with it. And it was frustrating for me and disheartening for them to say, Miss Stewart, I don't know what to do. I mean, it's like, God, you don't want to tell them what to do, so you say, well, just do your best. You're not being graded on it, just do your best. And so that was disheartening. It was frustrating. And in situations like that, I don't support it. I'm just saying I can see how teachers would be tempted in situations like that to just help kids do it. Because you don't want to see them struggle. You don't want to watch a kid just fall over a cliff and they don't know what they're doing just because you can't help them. So, yeah, it was a struggle. It was.
And then in 2008, you went to get your master's.
Yes.
What prompted that?
This standardized issue. I would go to in-services, professional development. I did all the necessary things, but I still didn't see the change in my students that I was hoping those experiences would give me. I didn't see the immediate turnaround or the light bulb go off for the majority of my students. And I thought, maybe it's me. Maybe I need to go back to school. Certainly it takes a village, to raise the child. You got to have the parent support. You have to have the student on board and the teacher. And before I would place blame on parents and the kids, home life, all that stuff is a given. Some things you can't change. But I thought I could change me. So that was why I went back to school.
And you went to Indiana University?
Yeah.
What made you decide on that?
Well, I wanted to come to Ball State, but they didn't have the curriculum and instruction degree that I was going for. And I prayed about it, and I said, okay, came to IU.
How is it different than your first college experience?
Oh, boy. Graduate school just overall is so much different. I think it's better. It's more concentrated on what you're really interested in, especially with me having had work experience. And then going to graduate school, I could immediately see where I would apply some things. Another difference is in undergrad, you don't have just those general classes. I mean, it's very specific to what you're interested in. So I'm a big proponent of graduate school. It was a lot different. I really liked it.
And you started working at IU. Was that right after you got your master's?
It was while, it was right after I got my master's, and I was taking my doctoral coursework. That's when I got the teaching position. And what do they call it, like a GA-ship? Something, I'm probably not using the terminology right, but I was still a graduate student, but able to teach an undergraduate class. And the way they set it up at IU is they reserve a few sections for graduate students to teach the class as an opportunity for them to get some practice and experience teaching on the graduate level. That way when they graduate, they can apply for that type of job.
What made you get your graduate degree then?
Which one?
The first one?
The master's?
Yeah.
Well, I went to IU to get the doctorate.
Okay.
But I figured, well, let me go ahead and get the master's as well. I've heard of faculty getting the bachelor's and then immediately getting the doctorate. I only know one faculty member that did that, and I think that's very odd. So it's kind of like jumping 5 grades. And so, I knew I wanted to eventually get the doctorate, so I said, well, let me get the master's. It will help me see some progress for myself. And again, not knowing what I necessarily 100% wanted to do, I figured, let me get as much as I can while I'm here.
Did you ever think you'd end up teaching graduate courses then?
No. When I went into grad school, my goal was always to go back to Gary. I knew what the data said, that first year teachers within those first 5 years, that revolving door is so serious, they never come back. And I did not want to be one of those teachers. And so it really hurt my heart once I realized that I wanted to teach on the undergraduate level and not return back to Gary. And so it was, it still makes me a little sad because I thought, I'm a statistic, But I calm my conscience by saying, and I tell my students this on the first day of class, I have 20 students in my class, and you all are going to have your own class of 20 students. So I feel like I'm reaching more kids this way than having my group of 20, than having 20 future teachers who are going to have a class of 20 students. So I feel like I'm reaching more kids. At least that's what I tell myself. Yeah.
Do you enjoy teaching older students then or younger students?
I still like the young ones. I do, but it's amazing. And I mean, this is no offense, but it's something, the older and the younger, there is really not that much difference. And it's just in different ways. There's still the questions, just little things that you think you'd be nervous about teaching 19, 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds that are future adults and can potentially question your authority. I mean, these are the reasons why I went into elementary and not secondary. So I'm thinking, man, I'm really asking for it. But it really is not that big of a difference, especially with my area, elementary education. I feel as if I'm not only preparing future teachers for the classroom, but I'm giving them my experience, not only as just a former teacher, but a former teacher in an urban setting. And so I realized that that's a different experience than, say, rural or suburban. So I really like it. I do.
And then in 2009, you came to Ball State then.
Mm-hmm.
What prompted the move from IU to Ball State?
Well, I saw the opening of the position, and the chair of my dissertation committee encouraged me to come because at that point, I wasn't that far off from completing all of my doctoral coursework. It was just a dissertation lying before me at that point. And she really encouraged me to take the position, it was at Ball State. You graduated from there, you always said you were going to go back and teach. I mean, she's putting my words back on me. And so I thought, yeah, you're right. But, so I was still afraid. But seeing the position open and being encouraged to do so, I went ahead and took the leap, and I'm so glad that I did. I love working here. I love it. Mm-hmm.
Did you ever think you'd come back here?
Oh, no. I mean, I remember when I'm in Dr. Tancock's office, me telling her, I'm going to have your job. You never know what you're going to do, but it's very humbling. And I even said that to I'm not for sure which committee it was that interviewed with me or took me to lunch as I was visiting campus that day. But I was so humbled that they would want to hire their own because other universities don't do that. They tell you when you graduate, go off, make a name for yourself, do some things, and then apply to come back. And I was very humbled and honored that Ball State would hire their own. I was also glad because I vividly remembered key moments in my undergraduate experience that I knew I could shed light for my students and say, I know where you are. I know where your mind is right now. I'm going to help you get to where you want to be. I can relate to where you are. So I'm glad that they picked me up for that.
How's it different being a teacher versus when you were a student?
If nothing else, the most frequent thing is just the driving perspective. When I was a student here, I did not have a car. I walked everywhere. So it's a challenge to tell people where to pick me up from. If like my best friends pick me up, I can never say, well, pick me up at this spot. It's like, well, remember when we were here and we used to walk through? I mean, it's still a challenge. Walking campus, man, I no longer, frown on my students for being late. Man, I know what it's like to try to make it from one end of campus to the other in 10 minutes. If your professor doesn't let you out on time, it kind of throws everything off. So I think back on that and I extend probably a bit more grace than some of my other colleagues just on campus do, but it's because I remember walking or wanting to take the shuttle when it's crowded and you're like, oh, I gotta walk, things like that.
What do you like most about the university then?
I really like that the university encourages you to be your best self, to teach with your passion and tap into your strengths and what you're most interested in and find a way to use that in your teaching. I really like that. I'm a very hands-on person, and so I like that I'm encouraged to take my students on field trips. I like that I'm encouraged to invite guest speakers in and do unorthodox things, if you will. I really like that that's encouraged, and I'm rewarded for that. I would say that's what I like the absolute most, that creativity is almost a requirement, not something that you just have an epiphany every month or once a semester, but it's encouraged for you to tap into yourself and be that type of a teacher. I really like that.
Is there anything you think the university could improve on?
I would say I think it should be mandatory, and I know that's a big word, but I would strongly encourage elementary education majors to all of them to have some type of immersive learning experience. There's just something that guided, supervised, real life experience can give you that just cannot be matched in the classroom. I can tell you about it all day, but when you actually go out there and have your own real world experience, you come back to the classroom more focused. You get back on your square, you're revived, and you finish strong. I always try to encourage my students to finish strong, and I think immersive experiences like that really allow students to finish strong. So, and I would say not just any immersive experience, but directly connected to what you want to do after you graduate. If you want to be an educator, have some type of immersive experience in that field. I would strongly recommend that. It makes you a more solid candidate when you interview. You have more strengths. You have more product to present. You're really able to tap into your best self, and whoever you're interviewing with can really see that.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to move forward to today.
Sure.
Then. You're still involved in mentorship programs.
Yes.
What do you think the hardest thing about being a mentor is?
Finding the time. I really did not. I hate that I'm so busy, because I know the power of having someone just give you little nuggets of wisdom here and there that may or may not be warranted, but you think back on it and say, man, somebody told me that. I really hate that time is a challenge, that I'm committed in so many different things, because I do believe in mentorship. I really do. And so I hate that that's a challenge, just finding the time for both of us to get together and have some solid, uninterrupted time to just talk and make sure that she's getting the most out of her experience here, and that if there's anything that she needs from me, that I can readily give it to her and us not feel rushed with our conversation to move on to the next thing, but we can really talk and converse with one another.
Why do you think it's important for these young people to have mentors?
Because they don't know everything. As a 20-year-old, 19-year-old, you really think, I say it because I know. You think you know everything, or I've got a good handle on it. And whatever it is you have to tell me, you only have that experience because you messed up at some point. Man, if we could just learn to, and I'm not saying as if I don't have a mentor. Somebody's mentoring me now. Just to sit down and listen, be quiet, and absorb it. Because we don't know everything, and it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to change your mind once you get new information. So just realizing that it's okay to not know everything, and to tell your mentor, man, I don't know. If you can't tell anyone else, you can kind of be transparent with them so that you can get what you need to know, and then go back out there and do well.
I remember reading that you helped volunteer with Martin Luther King Jr. Day in Bloomington.
Yeah.
What does that day mean to you specifically?
Well, I must say it wasn't until really volunteering with that I saw the power of the slogan, not a day off, but a day on. You hear it all the time. It's catchy. But to really take advantage of that day and educate students, and kids, citizens of the community, not just about Dr. King, but just the power of the civil rights movement and what the power of your voice can what it can do, and for you standing up for what's right. When you really look at it, Dr. King was not much older than you. We think of Dr. King and Rosa Parks, all these other big name people as someone older and having experienced life. Man, he was in his mid to late 20s. But he did some big, brave things. And just to help students walk away from that saying, I can do that too. It may not be to that extent, but just in my sphere, my circle of things. If I see something that's not right, I have permission to stand up for it. And if I'm by myself, it's okay, because someone still needs to stand up for it. So volunteering with that, kids would come to IU from some of the after school programs in Bloomington, and they would watch a video on Dr. King and Rosa Parks. They do some type of diversity team building activity. I mean, it was pretty cool what they would do. And I thought, man, that really helped me see the power of a day on, not a day off. It really did.
And you mentioned briefly the Rodney King thing.
Yes.
Do you see race relations like improving in the future? Because there was like Michael Brown in 2000.
Yeah.
And
you know what? I really don't know. I will say this. It seems as if people are more open to have conversations about race relations, about diversity, things of that nature. And I'm just hoping that it isn't a trend, but I'm hoping that it's really a change of heart. You see it in commercials with, interracial marriages, same-sex couples. I mean, you see all of this, and I'm just hoping that it really is people having a change of heart and it not just being a trend, because if it isn't a change of heart, then you will have the Michael Browns, the Trayvon Martins, all the other cases that haven't made CNN, that happened in Gary, that you and I don't know about. So that's really my hope, that if things are changing, that they change because something really happened in my heart or in my mind that really made me say, wow, society is not this big abstract bubble out there. I make up society, and it will change when I change. And so that's my hope. So I can't say if it is changing. I'm just hoping if it is, it has staying power, and it's not a trend like wearing big frame glasses and, teasing your hair, but it's a for real change. That's my hope. So like a trend, we'll see if it has staying power in the next 5 years. That will kind of let me know, okay, people were serious, or nope, that was just a wave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, beyond just knowing for yourself, what do you think is needed to help it change?
I think people being brave enough to just talk about it and not think you have to be politically correct, but just be honest. Have open, honest dialogue and not be afraid, like I was as a college student here, or just as a young girl. Maybe it's the middle child syndrome or not, I don't know. But not being afraid to have those challenging conversations and saying it's okay if someone gets offended. It's okay if your feelings get hurt, or if you get emotional about it. That means that you're tied to it. There's a deeper, something deep that's supporting why you think what you think. Let's talk about that. And if we really try to walk away educated, then it'll be okay. Really, and I know that sounds so cliche-ish and real, fantasy land, but really that's the honest to goodness truth. I teach, like I said, this social studies class is predominantly white. And when we talk about race or just anything related to race, I see my students get a bit anxious, and it's like, okay, it's okay. I'm not gonna be all black professor. We're gonna have a conversation about it. And I think just me being open about it and transparent, and me sharing my biases, my concerns, it may help them reciprocate the same thing, and us having honest dialogue and realizing I'm not trying to hate you, or if I do have a history of hate, I want to know where that comes from, and me try to educate you and you not being offended by it. So it really has to take honest dialogue and not finger pointing, but just talking about how things make us feel and what our realities are, and helping just relate to one another. It's necessary. I think that could help.
I'm gonna move to like reflecting back on your past just a little bit, but
Sure.
just last year your high school was closed in Gary.
I know.
What were your thoughts on that?
I was so sad. It really made me feel as if, because it wasn't just my high school. My elementary school closed down, several years ago as well. It made me, I'm so afraid that something's going to happen, and this may seem so extreme, but I'm just afraid that Gary's just going to shut down. It made me feel as if my childhood did not exist. That's how it made me feel. And so it was really, really sad just to see that the test scores didn't improve or whatever caused the shutdown of the school. It probably was a process of things related to test scores. But it was very, very, very disheartening. Very disheartening. It did. It made me feel like my childhood was erased. Like 5 years from now, or maybe 2 years from now, if a visitor comes through and sees the high school closed, they may think it's always been closed. And it's like, no, it was open, it was vibrant. So I feel like, yeah, some of my history kind of was erased.
Do you think Gary will ever be able to recover?
I do not know. My parents would tell me years ago when they were children, Gary used to be big and booming and thriving, and people from Chicago would come to Gary and shop. I still can't wrap my mind around that. I hope it does. I honestly don't know. It doesn't look like it. My father moved here, and I'm so glad that he did. Just because things, it just seems as if it's just looking worse and worse. It doesn't seem to be any new life thriving into it at all. All the more reason why I was so sad after I graduated from IU that I didn't go back to Gary. And I've tried to go back for different opportunities, but we just cannot seem to connect. And so I'm really sad about how it just is looking. And I'm afraid that it isn't going to get any better. I don't know how a city would close, but I'm afraid that that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any family that still lives there?
I do. I have, let me see, I have an aunt that lives there. I have a few cousins that are there. Some live in Maryville, but a lot of people are just kind of leaving. And so that doesn't help either. Yeah.
What's making the ones who are staying stay?
I think they're staying because that's all they know. It's home. Mm-hmm. And you may visit places, but this is home, this is what I know. And we all, even me growing up in Gary, I knew it was tough. I didn't realize how different it was until I left and came here to Ball State. But if you're involved in it for so long or there for so long, you don't realize the issues that are there. So they may not even realize how bad it is.
Mm-hmm. How has it changed since you were a kid?
Well, some of the high schools are gone. A lot more of the businesses are gone. The type of businesses that are there, they just seem very turnaround, which is something because IU is still there and the area around IU seems to be guarded, protected, but everything else around it is ever changing. So, yeah, it doesn't feel the same level of safeness or homeness. You have a lot of people from different housing complexes in Chicago that closed down that are moving to Gary. So that's a different mindset. Granted, Gary has its own level of poverty, but when you marry a different city's poverty, that culture, that perspective with another one, then it's like totally different. So it feels different going back home.
How do you think your dreams and goals have changed as you've gotten older?
It's more focused on how I can help people. It isn't so much just education related, but looking to see how I can, connect education, but just try to help. It seems so, fantasy-like to say that, but I really try to make meaningful changes. And education is meaningful, don't get me wrong, but outside of the classroom, really being involved in a lot more things that connect with people and not academically per se. So I really try to do a lot more meaningful things. So volunteering more, helping more with kids, working with nonprofit organizations. Like I'm more focused on that now than I was when I first came here. Yeah.
How do you think Ball State has prepared you for your future then?
I would say just coming to Ball State and being forced to see that everyone in my, this isn't my hometown. There are people that are different than me, and still being made to find the commonality between myself and someone else that's different than me. So the racial differences, I would say, were helpful. I'm not as nervous to have conversation with people that may appear to be different than me, and I might think we have nothing to talk about, So that Ball State prepared me for that, definitely.
Okay. Well, before we end the interview, is there anything about your life or your experiences at Ball State that you'd like to tell us about?
I will say one thing that stood out to me that just really kind of helped me see just the power of your voice. I remember one particular incident where a couple of we weren't friends, but I knew them. They were accused of like having a gun or something at one of the bookstores, and the guy, it was only a comb in his pocket. And so he came to the Ball State Student Association meeting and shared this, and it was just really something to see students respond immediately. And I mean, we had like a silent protest on campus where we lined up on both sides of McKinley, I want to say from RB down to TC, and we didn't say anything, we just stood there. And I remember only being able to like clock in so many hours because I had a class that I wasn't doing well in, so I had to be there. But just to see how you can make a statement, you can say something. I remember when we didn't have Dr. King Day off, like for real, we had class, and us talking with our professors and saying, this is not right, why should we? And they would say, I know, or others would say, well, that's the policy. And being forced to make a decision of, okay, am I going to stand up for something and take the hit for not going to class, or will I just concede and go anyway? So just little pockets of experiences like that made me speak up about things and get more comfortable now and to be able to talk about it freely with my students. So I'm grateful for those experiences here on campus.
So really interesting.
Yeah, I remember those.
Well, on behalf of the Ball State University African American Alumni Oral History Project, I'd like to thank you for participating.
Thank you for allowing me to participate. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Oh, good. Thank you. Me too. This is great.